Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to make an important presentation in relation to the conclusion of the Bougainville referendum process. Before I do my presentation, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the presence of the Vice President of the Autonomous Bougainville Government, Honorable Ezekiel Massat, and some ABG members who are here up at the gallery to witness this presentation. They are here while the Parliament of the Autonomous Bougainville Government is also in session as I speak. And I'd like to acknowledge them, and specifically I want to commend Honorable Massat's leadership in our discourse in progressing the Bougainville, ongoing Bougainville peace process. I'd like to commend his leadership because he has represented the ABG very well in this ongoing process, and I'd like to comment that. Mr. Speaker, I'll be doing two things today. First, I'll give an update report on the Bougainville process. Second, I'll be presenting, after my statement, I'll be presenting the draft sessional order for Parliament to adopt. Before I do that, I've noticed confusion in the public area regarding what we are doing now. Let me just clear that by saying that what is coming before the Parliament now is not the referendum result on Bougainville. I'd like to be very clear on that, and I'd like the House and everyone to take note of that. What is coming before this House today is not the Bougainville referendum result. And before I go to the detail of my report, I'd like to clear that by saying that in this Parliament's final decision-making process, there'll be 4 phases in this process. The first is the tabling of the Bipartisan Parliamentary Committee's report, which was done on the 2nd of June last week by the Chairman, Honorable Marat. The second phase is the presentation of the sessional order, which I'll be doing it today. The third phase, after the sessional order is adopted by the House, as the House deems fit, the third phase would be that the presentation of the consultation report and the Bougainville referendum result after the sessional order is adopted. And the final phase is that after the presentation of the consultation report and the referendum result and debates have ensued, final vote on the referendum result following the process in the sessional order will take place at the date when the Parliament chooses our Prime Minister has indicated that that decision and the government position is to happen on or by 30th of August. With that, Mr. Speaker, I now am going to give an update report on the consultation process and the referendum process in relation to the ongoing Bougainville peace process. Mr. Speaker, I rise before the House today to provide an important update on the Bougainville peace process and to outline the approach that will be taken to bring the results of the referendum on Bougainville's political future to the National Parliament for deliberation. Since the referendum was held in the latter part of 2019, the government has undertaken extensive work to progress the post-referendum consultation process. This statement sets out the background to that work, the consultations undertaken to date, the national government's position on the Melanesian framework, and the responsibilities of this Parliament. It also outlines the role of Parliament under Section 342 of the National Constitution, the proposal to bring forward the results by way of a sessional order, and the next steps required to bring this matter to a responsible and lawful conclusion. Mr. Speaker, Bougainville's journey to this point has been long, painful, and deeply significant for our nation. The Bougainville conflict, which erupted in 1988, was grounded in long-standing grievances relating to identity, land, and the impacts of the Panguna mine. The conflict resulted in thousands of deaths, widespread displacement, and destruction of infrastructure and livelihoods. It remains one of the most traumatic chapters in our nation's short history. The Bougainville Peace Agreement, signed in 2001, brought an end to the decade-long conflict and established three pillars for peace. First, autonomy. Second, weapons disposal. Third, a guaranteed referendum on Bougainville's future political status. The Bougainville Peace Agreement was given constitutional force through the insertion of Part 14 into the National Constitution and the enactment of the Organic Law on Peace Building in Bougainville, Autonomous Bougainville Government and Bougainville Referendum 2002. This created the Autonomous Bougainville Government, established the autonomy arrangements that are currently in place, and guaranteed that referendum would be held no earlier than 10 years and no later than 15 years after the first Autonomous Bougainville Government election. Mr. Speaker, the referendum was conducted in 2019, and 97.7% of Bougainvilleans voted in favor of independence over the alternative option of greater autonomy. It is important to note that under the terms of the Bougainville Peace Agreement, and as reflected in Section 342 of the National Constitution, these results are not binding but must be tabled in the National Parliament for a final decision. It is non-binding in the sense that it is subject to the National Parliament's decision. This is a position that both governments respect. Since 2019, the national government and the Autonomous Bougainville Government have engaged in a series of structured consultations to determine how the referendum results should be brought before the National Parliament. These consultations have taken place through the joint supervisory body established by the Constitution, the joint post-referendum consultations, and more recently the joint moderated consultations. Each stage has sought to clarify constitutional issues, establish a roadmap for tabling the results, and build a shared understanding of the political pathway ahead. Mr. Speaker, the first major milestone was the Kokopo Joint Statement of May 2021, which directed technical teams to address the meaning of ratification, the constitutional process for tabling the results, and the development of a joint roadmap. This was followed by the WABEC roadmap in July 2021, which set an aspirational time frame for a political settlement between 2025 and 2027. The Port Moresby Joint Statement of December 2021 reaffirmed the need for a clear mechanism to bring the referendum results to the National Parliament, leading to the what we call Aracone Covenant in April of 2022. The Covenant committed both governments to tabling the results of the referendum in the 11th Parliament and allowed for the development of constitutional regulations pursuant to Section 349 of the Constitution to guide the process. Mr. Speaker, despite significant efforts, technical work on the constitutional regulations stalled, unfortunately, due to divergence or differing legal interpretations, particularly around the meaning of ratification and the voting majority required in Parliament. As a result, the Joint Supervisory Body agreed in July 2023 to use a sessional order rather than constitutional regulations to prescribe the process for tabling the referendum result. The content of this sessional order remains subject to continued discussion between the Speaker of our National Parliament and the Speaker of the Bougainville House of Representatives as agreed under the Melanesian Agreement signed on the 26th of June 2025, and I will talk more about that process later in this statement. Mr. Speaker, to assist in resolving outstanding issues, both governments agreed to engage an independent moderator, leading to the joint moderated consultations held in 2025 in Port Moresby and Burnham in New Zealand, chaired by former New Zealand Governor-General Sir Jerry Mataparae. These consultations culminated in the Melanesian Agreement signed on 26 June 2025. The agreement commits both governments to jointly develop a Melanesian framework, which is a structured political pathway that may form part of the joint consultation report to be presented to Parliament. It also reaffirms the constitutional role of Parliament under Section 342, the need for a bipartisan parliamentary committee to support awareness, and the importance of public messaging to ensure national understanding of the whole process. Mr. Speaker, the national government's position is grounded in constitutional law. The Bougainville Peace Agreement and the need to preserve national unity while respecting the aspirations of our beloved Bougainville people. The government maintains that the National Parliament is the final decision-making authority on the referendum results. Section 342, subsection 2 of the Constitution requires that I, as Minister for Bougainville Affairs, table the results of the referendum, after which the National Parliament may make any decision it considers appropriate. On this point, I need to be clear. The national government has rejected the autonomous Bougainville government's interpretation of the term ratification in the Bougainville Peace Agreement and any suggestion that the National Parliament is required to merely endorse or accept the referendum results. The term ratification was deliberately omitted from Section 342 of the National Constitution to avoid confusion with the treaty ratification provisions of the Constitution and to ensure the National Parliament retains full discretion. The Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed that position, that the National Parliament is not a mere rubber stamp for executive decisions and must be free to debate and determine matters of national importance. The referendum results, while politically significant, are not binding and must be considered in accordance with our constitutional laws and subject to the National Parliament's decision-making authority. Mr. Speaker, Section 342 of the Constitution places the National Parliament at the center of the post-referendum process. As Minister, I must table the results and the outcome of our joint consultations, and the National Parliament must make a decision. However, the Constitution does not prescribe the procedure for tabling, debating, or voting on the referendum results. To address this procedural gap or vacuum, the National Government and the Autonomous Bougainville Government have agreed that the National Parliament will adopt a Sessional order. Mr. Speaker, the Sessional order will establish the process for introducing the referendum results and the joint consultation report, the structure and timing of debate, and the applicable voting threshold. Mr. Speaker, agreement on the voting thresholds required for both adoption of the Sessional order and consideration of the referendum results has been a long-standing point of contention between the National Government and the Autonomous Bougainville Government. To resolve this, both governments have taken the Speakers of the National Parliament and the Bougainville House of Representatives to finalize the Sessional order. Mr. Speaker, the respective Speakers have consulted on this matter. The Sessional order was largely agreed with, the only difference being the required voting thresholds. Following the consultations, I wish to inform the Honourable House that the Leader of the National Parliament, the Speaker, has now finalized, in yourself, Mr. Speaker, has now finalized a Sessional order to govern the parliamentary consideration of the Bougainville referendum results. Mr. Speaker, we have now embarked on the final steps of our journey in bringing the Bougainville referendum results to the National Parliament. This was initiated last week on the 2nd of June with the tabling of the report of the Bipartisan Parliamentary Committee on Bougainville by Chairman Honourable Marat. As you will have already noted, the committee is playing a critical role in preparing members of the House for this debate, ensuring so that we are fully informed of the legal, political and historical context. Mr. Speaker, importantly, the tabling of the report prompted some members to share their initial views. This is an important part of the process, and more views will be required to be shared as we move forward as part of the ongoing discussion and debate. From here, there are a number of further steps that need to be taken. Mr. Speaker, Step one is the adoption of the Sessional order. If the motion is supported, the procedural framework for consideration of the referendum results will be established and will result in Step 2, when the referendum results will be tabled together with the joint consultation report and melanation framework, and debates will commence. Step 3, Mr. Speaker, once sufficient time has been given for debates, members will be required for the final vote on the referendum result as declared by the Prime Minister. This will be no later than 30th August 2026. Mr. Speaker, I must advise that following the completion of this statement, that I intend to initiate Step 1 and move the motion to adopt the Sessional order. Central to this process is the development of the melanation framework. Mr. Speaker, this melanation framework is being jointly developed by the National Government and the autonomous Bougainville government and will form part of the joint consultation report. Its purpose is to provide the National Parliament with a clear and practical roadmap of what would follow any decision. Mr. Speaker, the national government's position is that should the National Parliament vote in the affirmative to accept the referendum results and support a pathway to independence for Bougainville, this should initiate a phased and carefully managed transition rather than an immediate declaration for independence. It would also require constitutional amendments. Such a transition would be anchored in the progressive transfer of powers under Sections 289 and 290 of the National Constitution, ensuring that Bougainville is equipped with the institutional capacity, fiscal and economic strength, and governance systems necessary to sustain independence. Mr. Speaker, at the same time, we acknowledge that the autonomous Bougainville government has proposed a more accelerated pathway. I note these discussions are ongoing, and they are being conducted in good faith with mutual respect and with a shared commitment to reaching an agreed outcome. Mr. Speaker, as part of the government's commitment to ensuring that this process proceeds in a lawful, orderly, and constitutionally sound manner, legal advice has been sought from a range of senior legal authorities and law firms, including the State Solicitor. Mr. Speaker, the advice consistently confirms that the National Parliament has an essential constitutional role in considering and determining the outcome of the Bougainville referendum. Importantly, the advice is clear that the referendum result is not self-executing and does not, of itself, automatically confer independence upon Bougainville. Mr. Speaker, the advice further confirms that the legal advice further confirms that should the National Parliament vote to accept the referendum result, Bougainville would not immediately become an independent state under international law. Rather, further constitutional and legal steps would be required, including amendments to Section 2 of the National Constitution to remove Bougainville from the defined area of Papua New Guinea, together with the implementation of further transitional arrangements between the two governments. Mr. Speaker, the legal advice also addresses the implications of a negative parliamentary vote. In the meantime, in the main, Mr. Speaker, the advice indicates that a decision by the National Parliament not to accept the referendum result would amount to rejection of the proposal for independence for Bougainville, and unless expressly qualified by the National Parliament, would conclude the constitutional process contemplated under Section 342 of the National Constitution. Mr. Speaker, in those circumstances, it is important to note that the proposed arrangements under the Melanesian framework would not be triggered. Whilst the constitutional requirements of Section 342 of the National Constitution would have been satisfied, this would not mean that engagement between the national government and the autonomous Bougainville government comes to an end. Rather, Bougainville would continue to operate under the existing autonomy arrangements established under Part 14 of the National Constitution, unless and until this National Parliament determines otherwise in accordance with Section 345 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the legal advice further confirms that a decision not to endorse the referendum result would maintain the current constitutional status quo any alternative political settlement, including enhanced autonomy, new government arrangements, or another form of political relationship would require further consultation, negotiation, and parliamentary approval. Mr. Speaker, regardless of the outcome of the National Parliament's deliberations, both governments would need to consider the future operation of the Bougainville Peace Agreement and Part 14 of the National Constitution to ensure that the legal and political arrangements continue to reflect the realities of the relationship between Papua New Guinea and Bougainville. Mr. Speaker, in summary, the immediate next steps are clear. I must move for the sessional order to be adopted. Once adopted, the national government and the autonomous Bougainville government must finalize the Melanesian framework and complete the joint consultation report. Once these steps are complete, the referendum results together with the joint consultation report will be tabled in this House. And before the 30th of August 2026, the 11th Parliament members will then be called upon to make one of the most consequential decisions in our nation's history. Mr. Speaker, whatever decision is made, it must be grounded in law, informed by the Bougainville Peace Agreement, respectful of Bougainville's aspirations, and guided by our shared commitment to peace, unity, and stability. It is therefore critical when the time comes that all members of this House take time to consider the context and history of the Bougainville crisis and the proposed way forward. Only through exercising the democratic process can we chart a path forward. Mr. Speaker, over the coming weeks, I will continue to work to finalize the Melanesian framework with my counterpart and Vice President Honorable Massad. As Minister, I remain committed to fulfilling my constitutional obligation, and the government stands ready to work with the autonomous Bougainville government to secure a lasting peace in Bougainville. Mr. Speaker, this will be one of the most important decisions ever taken by this House. It must be a decision grounded in law, informed by history, and respectful of the express will of the people of Bougainville. Above all, it must be a decision that preserves peace and secures a stable future for all our people. Mr. Speaker, as Minister, I reaffirm this government's commitment to working in partnership with the autonomous Bougainville government to achieve a lasting and peaceful settlement. We approach this task with humility, with respect, and with a clear understanding of its significance for our nation. Mr. Speaker, with that, I commend this statement to this House.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take note of the paper, and I wish to support the Minister for Bougainville Affairs on this significant statement. Mr. Speaker, before I provide my support to his statement, I would like to, on behalf of my people of Bougainville, and I stand here as the regional member representing my autonomous Bougainville government, and I acknowledge my Vice President of the autonomous region of Bougainville and all my autonomous Bougainville government, members of House of Representatives, all my people of Bougainville, in Papua New Guinea, and all my people of Bougainville throughout the different regions of our global community who are now watching this significant moment in time of our history, and particularly in this point in time where, as we all know, there is no standing orders that provides for the assurance of this very important matter and therefore I would like to again sincerely appreciate the work of our good Minister Makiba in shouldering this significant responsibility, and I thank the Marape Rosa government and the wisdom of our Prime Minister in appointing Minister Makiba, who has been able to consult in a fair manner between the autonomous Bougainville government and continue to hold the spirit of Melanesia in engagement with our leaders of the autonomous Bougainville government. Today, Mr. Speaker, is not an ordinary day in Parliament. Today marks an important step in a journey that spans generations. Before I address the sessional order before this Honourable House, I wish to remind Parliament that the story of Bougainville did not begin with the referendum in 2019. It did not begin with the Bougainville Peace Agreement in 2001. And it did not even begin with the crisis of 1989. Mr. Speaker, the journey that brings us here today reaches back more than 140 years ago. Its origins can be traced to the colonial petitioning of the North Solomons in 1884 and the subsequent arrangements of 1886 and 1899, when foreign powers drew boundaries across Melanesia and separated peoples who had shared kinship, trade, culture, ancestry, and identity for countless generations. Long before Papua New Guinea became an independent nation, decisions concerning Bougainville were being made by distant colonial administrations. The people of Bougainville did not create those boundaries, Mr. Speaker. Those boundaries were imposed upon them. From that moment, a political question emerged that has remained unresolved throughout successive colonial administrations. Through Papua New Guinea's independence in 1975, through the North Solomons movement, through the Bougainville crisis, and ultimately through the Bougainville Peace Agreement. Mr. Speaker, for this reason, the Bougainville question is not fundamentally a dispute between Bougainville and Papua New Guinea. It is a colonial question. Neither Bougainville nor Papua New Guinea created this issue, Mr. Speaker. In many respects, both are inheritors of colonial legacies that has required wisdom, patience, and statesmanship to address. This is why the Bougainville Peace Agreement stands as one of the greatest achievements in our nation's history. It transformed a colonial question into a constitutional process. It transformed conflict into dialogue and grievances into a democratic choice, Mr. Speaker. At the outset, I wish to acknowledge and commend my brother and colleague, the Honourable Manasseh Makiba, Minister of Bougainville Affairs, for faithfully discharging his constitutional responsibility in bringing this matter before Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Today is not the day Parliament decides the political future of Bougainville. Today is not the day Parliament votes on independence. Today is not the day Parliament accepts or rejects the referendum results. Today, Mr. Speaker, Parliament is being asked to determine the procedure through which that future decision will be considered. The matter before us is the sessional order, Mr. Speaker. The sessional order establishes the process, rules, and framework through which Parliament will later consider the substantive matters relating to Bougainville, Mr. Speaker. Let us first agree on the process. Let us first agree on the rules. Let us first agree on the pathway. That is the purpose of the sessional order. The Minister for Bougainville Affairs will subsequently table the Bougainville referendum result, the joint consultation report, and the Melanesian framework, Mr. Speaker, These are the substantive documents that Parliament will consider when the time comes to deliberate on Bougainville's political future. The people of Bougainville were given two constitutional pathways towards lasting peace. Question number 1 on the ballot paper was greater autonomy, and question number 2 was sovereign independence. And the people made their choice. An overwhelming 97.7 voted for sovereign independence. Whether one agrees with that outcome or not, no one can deny the legitimacy, the process through which the choice was expressed. History will judge this Parliament. Today, however, we are not deciding the destination. Today, we are agreeing on the road. Before we decide where this journey ends, let us first agree on how we will travel together. That is the purpose of the sessional order. That's why I support it. And Mr. Speaker, again, on behalf of my people of Bougainville, I appreciate and thank both leadership on both the national government and the ABG in ensuring that we are able to provide a provision in which we can now put the questions of our people and the journey that began 140 years ago into its final decision-making body, the House of Melanesian Chiefs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to commend the statement by the Honourable Minister for Bougainville Affairs, the Honourable Manasseh Makiba. Mr. Speaker, from the outset, I'd like to also commend the work of the bipartisan committee on the referendum. Mr. Speaker, I think that this debate and the work of this committee and of the good minister raises some very, very serious questions that will affect the country. And I appreciate the minister's statement to encourage all members of Parliament to bear in mind the Constitution, existing laws, and especially the Bougainville Peace Agreement, and the historical context of both sides, people of Bougainville and the people of Papua New Guinea. I think, Mr. Speaker, no other issue brought to the floor of Parliament has created more anxiety, more ambiguity, and more ambivalence than the Bougainville issue. Therefore, I'd like to place on record, Mr. Speaker, my total appreciation for the guidance provided by the bipartisan committee and the minister in bringing the sessional order to the floor to help guide the House on how to proceed on something that is so important and in our view, Mr. Speaker, is somewhat overdue. It's been 7 years since the people of Bougainville voted on the referendum, and overwhelmingly with 97.7% of them saying that they wanted independence. So it's incumbent on the House, Mr. Speaker, and on the government to provide the leadership to expedite the process. Notwithstanding the gravity of the situation and the importance to ensure that all members of Parliament are aware of the implications of their decisions in the affirmative and in the negative too, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I commend the statement by the Honourable Manasseh Makiba, and we look forward to progressing this matter, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister alluded to on the 30th of August, we can bring it back to the floor and proceed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I rise to firstly support the statement delivered by the Minister for Bougainville Affairs, and I want to commend him as Minister for his steadfast leadership in the time he's been Minister. I want to also acknowledge the member for Abao, who served earlier in my tenureship as Prime Minister. Under his watch, the referendum process was supervised. I do acknowledge his leadership and those who served in this important portfolio before him. one of which notable is the late, the Honorable William Samp, the member for Guelala, then in his earlier role as Minister presiding over Bougainville matters. But a thank you to our national leaders would be in vain without thanking the Bougainville leaders. I want to thank all Bougainville leaders who have been part of the peace process since August 30th, 2001, up till at present. I recognize the work of the late Joseph Kabui as president then, as a leader then, and the first interim president, later president, and the leadership, his leadership cohort of Bougainville and PNG, for them to sit on the table of peace. And they construct what is historic, Bougainville Peace Agreement that has binded us to this day as we come to utilize provisions of the Parliament standing orders using a sessional order to usher in the result of Bougainville referendum to this Honourable House. Mr. Speaker, all who have contributed to the peace process thus far needs to be acknowledged. The issue before us, whilst is sensitive and consequential to our nation's future, it is something that we cannot ignore. The time is of essence. Time that was secured under the peace agreement pushed us to referendum at 2019, and hence we are running this process, Mr. Speaker. And so whilst it's sensitive, it touches our national identity, it touches our constitutional order, it affects the lives of our shared people, especially, more importantly, the children who will come after us or in our midst. I acknowledge the little children, the students who are amidst us at the public gallery. This is a historic moment and a huge moment. Both the Minister for Bougainville and also the regional member of Bougainville and Minister was a strong advocate for Bougainville independence. I just want to place on record, and rightfully so, is entitled to advocate for Bougainville's political independence that has been in voice since day one, whether in the Pango caucus, or in government caucus, or in cabinet, or even on the floor of parliament. They have spoken eloquently. This issue, Mr. Speaker, predates 1975, September 16, and correctly so predates 1988, predates 2001. The matter on Bougainville independence has been inherently deep in Bougainville for many, many years. It suffers to a big point in 1988 that culminated in the 2001 peace agreement that is shepherding us to these days. The referendum held in Bougainville in 2019 was not optional. It was constitutionally mandated under the Bougainville Peace Agreement, especially Part 14, Section 338 of the Constitution. It was conducted with the highest standards, with international observers assessing it to have been free, fair, and I want to acknowledge the United Nations' role in the conduct of the observation, supervision, and eventually referendum in 2019. They have been with us every step of the way since 2001, and I do acknowledge their hand. But in 2019, when the referendum was held, United Nations was part of the process and supervised the process. And so I want to inform this House the people of Bougainville participated peacefully and excuse me, an overwhelming turnout, and they expressed their views with clarity and dignity. Today we know the result stands 97.7% in the positive affirmation of the view that they must be politically independent. They choose political independence over maintenance of autonomy as it is at present. Mr. Speaker, this is the magnitude of task faced before us in this Parliament. My government over the last 7 years have given substantial intervention funds and substantial recurrent funds to Bougainville, but just like we've given all the other provinces. But this is not about funds and development, but it's about political aspirations that they've voted about. This Parliament is now faced with this choice of allowing them to be independent, or we hold them back and work in an arrangement that is within the construct of existing Part 14 of the Constitution, or something better. Mr. Speaker, we all cannot run away from this. We must deal with this issue. For decades, it has been an issue on our table. At 1988, when the power pylons first fell in Bougainville, our country was but only 14 years old as a sovereign nation. At 2001, when the peace agreement was signed, our country was but only 25 years old as a nation. And the peace agreement was stitched and constructed. Today, 25 years on since the peace agreement was signed, we are now in the process of using sessional orders to usher in the result of the vote that was held in 2019. Mr. Speaker, but all hope is not lost, as I spoke in my statement in response to the chairman of our bipartisan committee on Bougainville, the Honorable Dr. Alan Marat, who presented his report, that it is either going to be a yes vote in the majority or no vote in the majority. Whatever way this Parliament takes a vote, it is not a dead end in as far as our work and walk with Bougainville is concerned. Our work as two people will always be there going forward into the future, or one people, in as far as the Melanesia family is concerned. Our work for reconstruction of not just Bougainville, but the reconstruction or construction of our country will still go on. At 1975, Mr. Speaker, our budget, even at the full throttle of Panguna mine, let me place on record, our budget was only but 300 million kina. Not enough to meet the need of the 462,840 square kilometers of a country we call our home today, Papua New Guinea. Then at 1975, that land mass was lived by around 3 million people. Today, that same land mass is lived by almost 11 million people. Needs of our country remain big. At 1988, when the power pylon fell and the police were deployed in the first instance, the economy was still not big enough to handle all our needs. I could understand the rationale of Bougainvilleans when they fight for greater take from their resources. That is the same fight this government constructed in 2019. We fight in the floor of Parliament to take back more resources for our country through the legislative processes. Bougainville are front runners and pace setters, and for that I say thank you. They were fighting to take back more from the resources, but through the actual use of guns and the fight that took place since 1988. Mr. Speaker, history has been written. Past we cannot relive, but future we must construct. And at this juncture, I want to thank the 7 Prime Ministers of our country who have served before me. In 1988, it was Sir Rabin Amalio. In 1992, it was the Right Honourable Pius Winti. In 1995, it was the Right Honourable late Sir Julius. In 1997, it was late Sir Bill Skate. In 1999, it was the late Sir Mekere Morota. They all tried their best. They all gave their best out. Just like me today, when there is a civil disorder in Enga province, or Hela province, or Southern Highlands, to protect the resources of our people there, the innocent, we do deploy police. The police is handicapped, we deploy military to assist in the process. Those prime ministers in those times saved their moment. If I was there, then I would have possibly operated the same manner because budget was limited, small at the time. And I take my hats off to them. Most of them have perished and are laying from their work. I give my commendations to them. I want to pay special mention to late Sir Bill Skate, perhaps the first to have set foot in Bougainville at the peak of the crisis. He was there, started the process of peace. I thank Sir Mekere Morota, who then sat on the table of peace. I invoke the blessing of Matthew 5 verse 8 or 9 that says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." To late President Kabui, to late Peter Siamalili Sr., to late Francis Ona, and many who have passed, I say thank you to them too. They sat on the table of peace in 2001. To my brother, the current President Ismail Toroma, was an important signatory to that peace agreement. To my brother, Vice President Massad, who's still here, I say thank you to you. There are many. Some have gone on PNG side, the national side, and some have gone on the Bougainville side. But for those of us who remain here today, it is now our duty to pick up the issue, give proper context to it, understand the magnitude of the issue, think from Bougainville side and PNG side together, and we process. Since 2002 up to 2011, I thank the Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare, who played his role, including I was his Minister for Education in 2009. The first function to be transferred to Bougainville was Education Ministry under my watch. First function. Section 290, if I'm not wrong, has all the powers, Mr. Speaker. There are over 59 powers defined in Section 290 of the Bougainville, I beg your pardon, of the Constitution. All the functions are there to be transferred. And I want to tell the Bougainville people, if not all functions has been transferred to date as yet, it takes two sides of the negotiation table. Bougainville government, by constitutional provision, I cannot quote the provision right now out of my head, but there's a provision in the Constitution that says 12-month notice the Bougainville government gives the national government and the drawdown is made. Today, under our watch in this government, I thank Deputy Prime Minister Lenz, the total state land in Bougainville is now not owned by the national government but by the Bougainville government. Total state land transferred back. In the exercise of 290, fisheries powers have been given back. And in fact, we're going one step into both the artisan fishery as well as the deep fishing licenses. We're working to make sure they have their fishing space. 100% of Panguna has been given back to them. All resources has been passed back to them. Mr. Speaker, we only hold back. Now, when I picked up the referendum result in Arawa in 2019, I said, every power comes back to you. Those powers in 290, those powers in 2892, we can look into the national powers. The only thing we will retain, subject to the process running and subject to the Parliament deciding. The only thing we will retain is foreign affairs, defense, currency, and Supreme Court. Others and any and every power to operate an economy, a government, and a community is already encapsulated in 290 and more from 289. This government stands ready to give them as we speak, as well as subject to the process that will unveil after the votes have has taken place. Mr. Speaker, to Bougainvilleans and Papua New Guineans, we do not need to fear this one. And I want to credit the architects of the 2001 peace agreement for giving a beautiful peace agreement to us and embedded in the Constitution. I want to say at this young side, Mr. Speaker, you may talk big, but thank you to Marshall Bougainville leaders. Maski only lose him life. Nah, I what I put on one sinan one temol by 2001 only give him respect to national parliament. Because talk belong all or give him respect to national parliament, and we stop inside lo bell belong section 342, subsection 1 and subsection 2, especially subsection 2 process we run him now. Subsection 2 process and we talk national parliament by make him decision. National parliament by make him decision. That law has stood the last 25 years, the national parliament must make decision. But as national parliament make him decision, elect on this parliament, offer him advice to Minister Manasseh, offer him advice to Yumi Olgada, offer him advice long Bougainville leadership too. You may know clear, one time by Yumi vote, me propose him 38th of August 2026, Constitution one time Melanesian Framework Agreement, thinking blood two black government, say we must hurry up this blah. May propose him August 30, but subject we will hold, the President and myself will agree to an important meeting, joint meeting between both sides in July in Buka, and we'll agree on a date as to when the result will come. That agreement is not just a President and a Prime Minister conversation or Minister Massad and Minister Makiba conversation. Mr. Speaker, ME stop long spirit long 342 subsection 1. 342 subsection 1 and we talk. Both sides must consult after a referendum. And consult after a referendum we did, Mr. Speaker. Time we plug along. First, after result finish, we plug along. First meeting after referendum long Kokopo. Me talk. Now me make one talk. Me talk lo Kokopo. Me talk. As high as Mount William is, the referendum result will stand like that. Mr. Speaker, me mini one lo display. And me mini Muslim like lo people. You me kiss him finish but send up yet. However, Parliament walk him display result, as you may bring him a vote, he come inside. None up one play rouse him like 97.7 and send up stuff. We just have to acknowledge this forever. That at one time they voted, and they voted for not autonomy, but full political independence. That question is explicit. That question is explicitly given to us in Constitution that we must ask for full political independence. Section 338 says this. So long, Kokopo mi blatok result must have yet. I made a commitment the result will be there. And to Bougainville, I give him assurance. Just like earlier when opposition were talking about something, I gave my assurance. James Marape, don't let my words come back empty. Bougainville, I've visited you more times than any other Prime Minister. It's on record. My heart is for you, but my mind will tell me what to do. This is an emotional matter, but we must make rational choices collectively going forward. This Parliament, and I want to say thank you to Bougainvilleans. Under the post-referendum talk now walk, where you started President Torama has never wavered. The Honorable Ismail Master has never wavered. The entire Bougainville team has never wavered. Minister Peter Siamalali, Sister Honorable Francisca Semaso, the Honorable Jimmy Mirentero, the Honorable Timothy Masu has never wavered. For them, it's independence or not independence. And we can understand this. I want to say to the people, your leaders have never failed you. But a process to the children of Bougainville and our country, our process is running. Our country is not a country without constitution. Constitution have yet to be talked through the peace process that National Parliament will decide. And this National Parliament will work. I want to thank Bougainvilleans. You understood me when I said, as high as Mount William, and that word still stands. The result will stand forever. Whatever happens during the vote, it will still continue. If it is no, we will continue. If it is yes, we will continue. That's what I said last week. You don't need to fear, and the rest of our country don't need to fear as we assess and weigh the options before us. Bougainville leaders, I say thank you. When we went to Wabek for the second post-referendum consultation, the leaders came into Wabek and I asked, again in my statement, I said, you think from my perspective as I think from your perspective. Buktambu talk, do unto others what you would want them to do to you, and we were in that mindset. I think from your independent aspirations, but you think from my defense of national security aspirations. Our country is not one language, one talk place against one language, one talk place. No, God. 1975, the most diverse nation on the face of planet Earth was fused into one nation we call Papua New Guinea today. And we have been running behind the flag, despite the hardships, problems, amidst our few joys in between. One people, one nation, one country, one constitution. It come today. Long Wabek me ask him, Yubla, think from our perspective as we think from your perspective. I want to say thank you. In the era corner after Wabek meeting, and I tell you, Mr. Speaker, why make this meeting along Wabek? And I thank Governor Iparas for being a wonderful host. Governor Iparas, thank you. Wabek, capital of Enga province, in case you may not clear. Enga province and Wambla province, it got 600,000 people speaking one language. Bougainville, you got more than 20 languages. Enga province, Wambla language. Enga province, you got Wambla gold mine too. Today this gold mine will go for the next 50 years from the studies coming out. Now when I ask you to think from my perspective, Mr. Speaker, what if sometimes down the line, God forbid, but someone with a lot of guns fights the police and fights the army, you salim go. Talk me power gun to me power gold to. Me like kissing more. Now fight. Now talk also. All right. You like in peace. We must get referendum. 600,000 people from one ancestor speaking one language. Don't think just, Mr. Speaker, don't think just because I'm stop inside long inland, you know, give affordability. Long all thinking also. Mr. Speaker, Rwanda and one black country, stop inside long inland long Africa. Size floor Rwanda and 26,000 square kilometers. Size Blenga province and 11,000 square kilometers. A little half. But suppose me throw my hella province go anta boligar gold na guess. I'm not like 10,000 go anta almost 26,000. So when I ask Bougainville, my brothers and sisters in Bougainville, my children in Bougainville, my leaders in Bougainville, the challenge I have is the fragility of this country. When you ask for independent provincial government in 1976, you got it, rest became provincial government. Time you talk about autonomy, you special case, you mean basket me, but other provinces too talk about autonomy. So when I ask, think from my perspective, I think from you. And the other day I gave commitment, we will not send soldiers and defense and police into Bougainville. We work to empower you as we ring fence you out and we deal with other parts of the country. As our nation faces to come out of our 50th anniversary to go into our 51st, the rest of our country will define autonomy in total clarity with no push beyond autonomy to independence as we deal with Bougainville as a special case waiting and to go forward. So I want to say thank you to the Bougainville leadership. They saw clarity what we need to do for the rest of the country. I take my hat out to President Toroma and Massad. We came down to Erakone meeting in Port Moresby, and we clearly established, and at the Erakone meeting, the Bougainville leadership said, yes, we now recognize that National Parliament is the supreme law-making body of the land. And so the rest of the country, I want to say, and I speak for Bougainville, even in the pain of more than 20,000 people losing lives, even in the face of 97.7% voting for independence, the Bougainville leadership under President Ismail Toroma and Vice President Massa today, at the time AG, they gave respect to the National Parliament. What more can you ask of them? Continuously. What more can you ask of them? Continuously. And so I want us to give this conversation a fair go. Fair go. As we process this, today will not be a moment to all of us speak. The Minister will introduce the sessional order. We'll usher in the result to the Parliament. We place it here. And I want each of you, I've asked all of you before, to consult your provincial assemblies, to consult your districts, and for us to have a fair go in this matter. And there was only issue on the voting threshold. I want to conclude my statement in support by saying there was a strong position from Bougainville that emerged that they voted for referendum, so Parliament will just affirm the result. But national government hold our ground, said Section 342, subsection 2, says Parliament will make decision. Parliament's decision is always by a way of vote. And this is a constitutional matter, and constitutional numbers will take precedent. I take my head again off to the Bougainville leaders. They, through the Melanesian agreement process, through the dispute resolution process that we invoked, or mediation, and said Jerry Matapora facilitated the second Banner meeting. In the second Banner meeting, it was agreed that National Parliament must process it, and two-thirds majority, absolute majority, in the affirmative must decide. Again, I take my hats off to Bougainville leaders. What more can we ask of them? And so I want to ask all of us, as we come to the next phase, we have to deal with this issue. There's no running away from it. Each of us must stand up. When I accept the referendum result in Arawa, to the Bougainvilleans, I made a statement that you always hold to me when I come back. I said I'm taking it in my bag as member for Tari. As a speaker, one person here, I have two roles, as Prime Minister and as member for Tari. My vote is one to Bougainville. When I take my vote, it'll be a one vote. To break the country, James Marabe don't have any locus standi. Simply put, meaning it's a legal word. I don't have standing. Majority agrees, the country will be broken. Majority disagrees, to my brothers and sisters in Bougainville. Pangu Party has a way out of this. We have a convention coming up a couple of days from today. I will put the Pangu Party policy on Bougainville to the table. If a yes vote, this is the way we'll process it. No, if majority says no, this is the way we'll process it. Eventually, giving respect to 97.7% view on self-determination. I want to ask you, Bougainville, as I conclude my speech, look at what powers you have drawn down already. Look at what work you've done already. It takes two sides of the coin. If I am to bet you, I want to bet you to be successful and not for you to fail. With these words, I ask all members of Parliament, let's separate this process through. We'll come back, all party leaders, consider this and make your statement. There's no hiding from the scrutiny. Each of us must decide on what is good for Bougainville and our collective future. Thank you too much.
The question is that the question be put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Honourable members, before missing out, the Minister of Bougainville Affairs, me like top clear lo here, plandi online blue milo place, ono sabe lo talk English, you bla kani mol talk tete, you bla popular minister, leader of government business, opposition leader na prime minister talk little talk pisin, na Papua New Guinea you stop harem tete ya. Siya by sing out lo minister lo propose motion blong and motion ya ino blok kanim vote blong referendum now. Ibla mas clear. Motion blong and lo kisim rot blong bring him desla referendum become inside long parliament na igat process stabiet lo parliament by luksabe lo desla referendum. So I'm talk clear blo yimi. All sem na missing out now, lo Minister lo Bougainville Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now rise to present the sessional order for adoption. Mr. Speaker, I move that pursuant to Section 342, subsection 2 of the National Constitution.
Honorable Minister, why you seek him leave past time?
I beg your pardon, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move a motion without notice.
Is leave granted? Leave granted, Mr. Minister?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that pursuant to Section 342, subsection 2 of the National Constitution and Standing Order 284, this Parliament resolves to adopt the following sessional order in relation to the results of the referendum on Bougainville in these terms. Number one, the Minister for Bougainville Affairs shall lay on the table the return of the writ containing the results of the referendum on Bougainville. He shall make a statement and debate will ensue. Debate may be adjourned from time to time until a question is put. 2. A motion that the National Parliament accept the results of the Bougainville referendum. 3. The motion must be supported by a 3/4 absolute majority.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Honorable members, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business. Honorable Member Abau, you raise a point of order. One point of order, Mr.
Speaker, firstly, I thought that the Parliament was going to at least have a little bit of debate on the sessional order. Hold on. Yeah. And then we adopt it. Correct. Because I raised two issues in my point of order. I know we already passed it, but it has to be recorded on the Hansard. My point of order is two reasons. One is in the minister's statement, according to the Melanesian Agreement, Mr. Speaker, you and the House of Representatives Speaker of Bougainville were to meet and consult over the sessional order. No, hold on. The Minister has admitted in his statement on page 5, paragraph 1, that the sessional order was largely agreed with, only difference being the required voting threshold. That was not agreed with. The reason why Matapara was brought in by the government was to particularly look at the sessional order issue. And the Melanesian agreement required you and both speakers to agree to. Now, that hasn't been agreed to. And then you are saying that in the second paragraph on page 5, the Minister says, I wish to inform the House that the Leader of the National Parliament, the Speaker, has now finalized a sessional order to govern parliamentary considerations. So it looks like you have done your job without further consulting your counterpart in Bougainville. Now the second issue, point of order. The only provision in the Constitution where 3/4 absolute majority is required is when the Parliament is voting for a boundary change. No other provision in the Constitution requires us to vote for 3/4 absolute majority. Where is this 3/4 absolute majority coming from? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member Abau. And Parliament, vote na itokorat finish long this was sessional order. All work ikamnap now na sessional order ya, and by come. Time you look too long. There's a point blue you know got the Constitution and Parliament ya and you write him. Parliament make him all lolo display. Lo come up in Constitution. Na there's la issue lo Bougainville lo give them independence. Na you will talk you know got the Constitution and yes it's true you know got the Constitution. Parliament you must decide lo display. You know legally something. Honorable member law about legally something number one blood legally voters or eyes or no long end. And we know legally something. And big plus something. Yes.
It's your standing order. Point of order, you must respond to it.
You talk. Honorable member about milarim you finish mo kada talk lo you na may respond na time you finish now you can talk. When I'm point of order and I'm last point of order lo you.
It's an issue that you have raised from the chair that I raise a point of order. And that is the issue of Bougainville. I'm no legally something. My question is, in this sessional order, subsection 3, the sessional order says the motion must be supported by a 3/4 absolute majority. And come where? Constitutional amendments, 2/3 absolute majority. This plus 3/4, and come where? That's the question.
Sorry, let me respond, Prime Minister, behind me when I'm. Honorable member Blabao, Desla, behind him all the consultation, Igolo NEC, all the na display, thinking long absolute 3/3 majority, absolute majority, 3/4 majority, and me come inside. Now Parliament now, and me right in finish display. Now time Minister me present him. All report now when I'm long and now. And time to debate where you can debate now, but the man by debate long. Honorable Prime Minister, when I'm point of whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to clarify, Dr. Bloss, because I'm senior to mass. Now look at him, confuse him, country or some, the process of confusion also work him upside. This la process he come now, and two black government want them approving penis. Let me come long, leg long, come back long. Tubla government, let me make a reference long, me blind sit down long, New Zealand, want them surgery, Matapora, you got area of dispute, long one majority by vote, lo, sessional order outside by come inside. So this long people sit down long banam. Committee long Marat was there, few of the parliamentary committee members were there, go through. Two governments finally agreed. That's why me talk, thank you, Lord Bougainville line. Only talk right, parliament must vote the voting majority and by 2/3 absolute majority. Or 3/3. 3/4.
3/4.
This was talk to establish standing order, me no talk to long minister long Manaseta Solnogat. Process, peace agreement process, and sanctioning this land and me blakarem come now. So talk to you clear. Two block government wanted me clear. But we having one block meeting again long July. One have me by one time by Karam's date vote come inside of parliament. Me propose him 30th of August, but both sides will agree. So we're now coming to the final stage. Sessional order, you may vote minutes longer and we talk. Thank you, Lord Display. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. I think talk me clear. It clear lo you me all geta. Road plongen lo come inside now lo parliament. And parliament you write him through lo display sessional order because you know got narda road can. So parliament you write him finish.